The massive ship drifted silently through the void, its dark hull reflecting the distant starlight. Dr. Tom Baker squinted through the viewport of his research vessel, his breath catching in his throat. The ancient vessel before him was just the first of many. A fleet of ships stretching far into the distance, each one perfectly preserved in the coldness of space. Primitive design, sneered lead researcher Rex from the Blue Star Empire, his crystalline features reflecting contempt. Look at that basic hull structure. No quantum shielding, no plasma conduits. This civilization clearly didn't survive past their early space age. Tom kept his thoughts to himself as the alien archaeological team continued their dismissive assessment. The joint expedition, comprising representatives from the 7 most advanced species in the galaxy, had stumbled upon this fleet during a routine survey of unexplored space. While his alien colleagues saw only obsolete technology, something about these ships called to him. "Let's dock with the command vessel," Tom suggested, pointing to the largest ship in the formation. "We should at least document this find properly." The docking procedure was surprisingly smooth, almost as if the ancient ship had been designed to accommodate vessels of various sizes. As the team made their way through the airlock, their environment suits protecting them from the vacuum, Tom noticed something odd. The corridors were perfectly sized for human proportions. "These readings make no sense," muttered Kate Wilson, Tom's fellow human researcher, as she studied her scanner. "The hull material. It's not registering as any known alloy, but it's held up perfectly for what must be thousands of years." The alien team spread out through the ship, their sophisticated scanning equipment humming as they cataloged what they assumed would be primitive technology. Tom followed his instincts, making his way toward what appeared to be the bridge. The layout felt strangely intuitive, as if he somehow knew where he was going. "More evidence of their limited development," called out Professor Yix, his tentacles waving dismissively. They still used physical controls instead of neural interfaces. How quaint. But Tom wasn't listening anymore. His light had fallen on something that made his heart race, writing on one of the control panels. Not alien script, but clear, perfectly preserved English letters. "Kate," he called out over the comm, trying to keep his voice steady. "You need to see this." She joined him quickly, and they both stared at the words etched into the metal. "UNSS Guardian, Earth Fleet Command." That's impossible," Kate whispered. "Humans weren't supposed to have achieved spaceflight until centuries after the estimated age of these ships." Tom ran his gloved hand over the letters, his mind racing. "Look at the design of everything. The corridors, the controls, the seats. It's all perfectly sized for humans. This isn't just some random ancient civilization's fleet. This was built by humans." A sudden hum vibrated through the deck plates beneath their feet. In the distance, ancient systems began to power up, responding to their presence. Emergency lights flickered to life, casting a soft blue glow throughout the bridge. "What did you primitives do?" Rex demanded, rushing onto the bridge. "Shut it down before you damage these artifacts." But Tom stood transfixed as more systems came online. A holographic display sputtered to life in the center of the bridge, showing a tactical map of the galaxy. It was different from modern maps, showing stellar configurations from thousands of years ago, but it was undeniably created by human hands. "We need to contact Earth immediately," Tom said, his voice firm. "What we found here, it changes everything we thought we knew about human history. And I have a feeling this fleet isn't just some abandoned relic." As if in response to his words, more lights began to activate throughout the vast fleet, visible through the bridge's viewport. One by one, the ancient ships stirred from their long slumber, awakening to the presence of their creator's descendants. The alien researchers watched in stunned silence as the supposedly primitive fleet began to reveal its true nature. They had laughed at these ships, but their laughter was about to turn into something very different: awe and perhaps a little fear, as humanity's greatest secret began to unveil itself among the stars. "The design is laughably basic," Rex insisted, waving his crystalline hand at the holographic display. Look at these propulsion systems. They don't even use quantum folding. Tom ignored the alien researcher's comments as he and Kate worked to understand the ancient ship's systems. 3 days had passed since their initial discovery, and while the other species continued to mock what they found, Tom noticed something fascinating about the technology. "Kate, look at this," he called out, pointing to an engine readout. "They're using nuclear fusion, but the efficiency rating is impossible. It's better than our modern antimatter drives." Kate leaned over his shoulder, her eyes widening as she studied the data. "That can't be right. The design is so simple, but these numbers." She tapped a few commands into her tablet. "Tom, these engines could run for thousands of years without refueling." A loud crash echoed through the bridge as Professor Yix knocked over an old console in frustration. "Nothing works with our advanced interfaces. Such primitive technology." "Maybe that's the point," Tom muttered to Kate. "Look around. Everything here is mechanical, built to last. No quantum circuits to degrade, no AI cores to malfunction. Just solid engineering that works as well today as it did thousands of years ago." The ship's lights flickered as more systems came online. Tom walked to a sealed door they hadn't been able to open before. Now, with power restored, it slid open smoothly, revealing a massive archive room. "More primitive data storage," Rex sneered, looking at the rows of crystalline memory banks. "We could fit all this information in a modern quantum cube the size of my finger." But Tom and Kate exchanged excited glances. Unlike the alien data systems that needed constant maintenance and updating, these storage crystals had preserved their data perfectly for millennia. Kate connected her tablet to one of the memory banks. "Tom, these are military logs, engineering reports, tactical data." "Wait." She stopped, her face going pale. This fleet, it wasn't just an exploration force. They were running from something. Tom looked over the data streaming across her screen. "No," he corrected quietly. "They weren't running. They were waiting." A sudden surge of energy pulsed through the ship. In response, a hidden panel opened in the center of the archive room. A hologram flickered to life, a recording of an ancient human admiral. To those who find this fleet, the admiral's image spoke clearly. "You have awakened humanity's last defense. We built these ships to last, knowing that one day they would be needed again." The alien researchers gathered around, their mockery forgotten as the admiral's message continued. "Our enemies believed that overwhelming force and advanced technology would guarantee their victory. They were wrong. We defeated them not with quantum weapons or AI warships, but with human ingenuity. Simple solutions, reliable technology, strategies they couldn't comprehend." Tom felt a chill run down his spine as the hologram continued. "But they will return. That is why we created this fleet, not with the most advanced technology, but with the most dependable. Not with the most powerful weapons, but with the most clever defenses. When they come again, you will need ships that cannot be hacked, systems that cannot be corrupted, weapons that cannot be turned against you." The message ended, leaving the room in silence. Even Rex looked shaken. Kate's tablet beeped with an alert. "Tom, you need to see this. The fleet's sensors are picking up something at the edge of their range. Whatever it is, it's massive, and it's moving toward populated space." "How long until it reaches the nearest colony?" Tom asked, already dreading the answer. "At its current speed, 3 months." Professor Yix's tentacles twisted nervously. "Surely our modern defenses can handle any threat. We have quantum shields, AI battle networks." Tom looked at the ancient ships visible through the viewport, their systems humming with power that had waited thousands of years to be used. "Maybe," he said quietly, "that's exactly what they're counting on." The primitive fleet suddenly seemed far more ominous, not a relic of the past, but a carefully planned defense against a future its builders had somehow known was coming. As the distant threat drew closer, Tom wondered if humanity's ancestors had once again outsmarted everyone by building something too simple to fail. The ancient fleet's command ship thrummed with increasing power, Over the past week, more systems had activated on their own, as if the ships were slowly waking from a long sleep. Tom and Kate worked tirelessly to understand the technology, while the alien researchers grew more nervous with each new development. "This has to stop," announced Council Representative Gray, who had arrived yesterday after hearing about the fleet's activation. His silver scales glinted in the ship's emergency lighting. "These vessels are too old to be reliable. Shut them down immediately." Tom looked up from the console he was studying. "We can't shut them down. The fleet is responding to something, maybe that massive object approaching from deep space. These ships seem to have a mind of their own." As if to prove his point, another system whirred to life. Screens around the bridge lit up, showing tactical displays and status reports. Kate rushed to the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Tom, look at this. The fleet's sharing data between ships. They're forming a network, but not like our modern quantum networks. It's different, simpler, but impossible to hack or disrupt." The alien council members huddled together, speaking in worried whispers. Their advanced scanners couldn't make sense of the fleet's technology. It followed rules they didn't understand, worked in ways their science said were impossible. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Red warning lights flashed as a new hologram appeared, different from the Admiral's message. This one showed scenes from an ancient battle. Tom and Kate watched in awe as human ships, looking much like the ones they stood in now, fought against massive dark vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. "The log date on this recording," Kate said, her voice shaking. "It's from over 10,000 years ago. Our history says humans were still living in primitive settlements then." The scenes continued to play, showing the human fleet using surprisingly simple tactics. While the enemy ships wielded what looked like incredibly advanced weapons, the human vessels used basic physics and clever strategy. They won not through superior technology, but through unpredictable maneuvers and unconventional thinking. "Look at their tactics," Tom said, pointing to one battle sequence. "The enemy ships are so advanced, they've become predictable. They rely completely on their AI and quantum systems. But the human ships, they're fighting like old sea captains, using terrain, using confusion, using the enemy's assumptions against them." Representative Gray slammed his fist on a nearby console. "Enough. This is clearly some malfunction or Prisit program. These ships cannot be from ancient humans. Your species was nowhere near this advanced." He was cut off as the entire fleet suddenly lit up at once. Through the bridge windows, they could see every ship powering up, their engines glowing with stored energy that had waited millennia to be used. "It's not just a fleet," Kate whispered, reading through newly activated data streams. "It's a warning system. These ships were placed here to detect when the enemy returned. And now they're back." Tom finished. He pointed to the long-range scanner display. The massive object they detected had resolved into multiple signatures. They looked exactly like the dark ships from the ancient battle recordings. The alien council members fell silent as they finally understood. What they had dismissed as primitive technology was actually humanity's greatest achievement. A defense system so basic it couldn't be corrupted, so simple it would always work, and so reliable it could wait thousands of years for its moment. "The fleet isn't just waking up," Tom said, watching as weapons systems began to power up across all ships. "It's calling for its crews. The logs say these ships were designed to be operated by future humans. By us. They were built to take advantage of human instincts and intuition." Kate looked at the tactical displays, which now showed the enemy fleet's approach vector. "How did they know? How did our ancestors know this exact moment would come?" Tom watched as more systems activated around them, the ancient fleet preparing for a battle it had always known would come. "Maybe that's the biggest difference between us and other species," he said quietly. "We don't just plan for the next year or the next century. When humanity builds something to last, we build it to last forever." The fleet's engines pulsed with bright blue energy, ready to defend the galaxy against a threat only humanity had been prepared to face. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was in chaos. Hundreds of alien representatives argued as holographic displays showed the approaching enemy fleet. Their modern scanners could barely detect the dark ships, which seemed to swallow light itself. "Our quantum defense grid will protect us," insisted Representative Gray, but his silver scales had dulled with worry. "We have the most advanced technology in known space." Tom stood at the podium, trying to make them understand. The ancient logs show that advanced technology is exactly what they used against us before. Your quantum grid, your AI systems, they'll be turned against you. The council chamber erupted in angry shouts. Kate worked frantically at a console, projecting new data from the human fleet onto the main screen. The ancient ships had been analyzing the enemy's approach, predicting their tactics based on records from the last war. "Look at these calculations," she called out. The ancient fleet's basic computers predicted their exact course. They're following the same patterns they used thousands of years ago. They're too advanced to think we'd try something simple. A high-pitched alarm cut through the argument. The enemy fleet had accelerated, covering vast distances far faster than should have been possible. They would reach the outer colonies in weeks, not months. Impossible. Professor Yix's tentacles twisted in agitation. No drive system can achieve those speeds. "Unless they're not actually moving," Tom said quietly, studying the ancient fleet's analysis. "The logs suggest they bend space itself. Our ancestors found a way to counter it, not with better technology, but with basic physics. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." The council members fell silent as they watched the tactical display. The enemy ships moved like a swarm of locusts, consuming everything in their path. Modern defense satellites went dark as they approached, their quantum systems failing or turning against their creators. "We need to evacuate the outer colonies," Representative Gray announced. "We'll fall back to our core worlds where our defenses are strongest." "No," Kate said firmly, pointing to another screen. "That's what they want." The ancient logs show their strategy. They herd populations together, then use their own defensive systems against them. The more advanced the technology, the more dangerous it becomes. Tom pulled up the battle plans stored in the ancient fleet's computers. "Our ancestors found their weakness. The enemy relies totally on advanced technology, on predictable patterns. They don't understand simple solutions anymore. They can't comprehend strategies that don't depend on complex systems." The council chamber was silent as Tom showed them recordings from the old war. Human ships using basic hit-and-run tactics, mechanical systems that couldn't be hacked, weapons that used gravity and kinetic energy instead of quantum fields, strategies that seemed primitive but worked perfectly against an enemy that had forgotten how to think simply. "This is why the fleet was built this way," Kate explained. "Not because our ancestors couldn't make it more advanced, but because they knew simple was better. These ships don't just fight the enemy. They represent everything humanity learned about beating them." A new alert sounded. The enemy fleet had changed course slightly, heading directly toward the ancient human ships. "They recognize the fleet," Tom said, his voice grim. "They remember their defeat. That's why they're coming to destroy it first. They know it's the only real threat to them." Representative Gray stood slowly. "How can we help? Our weapons, our ships, won't work against them," Kate finished. "But we don't need them. The ancient fleet needs human crews, people who can think creatively, who understand these simple but effective systems. The fleet has been waiting for us, training us through all our history without us knowing it." Tom looked at the tactical display, watching the enemy approach. Humanity's games, its sports, its primitive-seeming warfare, all of it had prepared them to fight this enemy. While other species relied more and more on advanced technology, humans had kept their connection to basic strategy and simple solutions. "Our ancestors knew this day would come," he said. "They built this fleet not just to fight, but to remind us who we are. The enemy thinks they're facing primitive technology." He smiled grimly. They're about to learn what humanity can do with the basics. The ancient fleet's engines pulsed with power, ready to prove that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. The ancient fleet hung in space, its ships now fully awake and humming with power. Tom and Kate had spent the last day studying the true purpose of each vessel, and what they found left them in awe. It's not just a military fleet, Kate explained to the gathered council members aboard the command ship. Each vessel serves a different purpose, all working together like parts of a giant machine. Tom gestured to the holographic display, showing the fleet's layout. This ship here is a factory, but not like our modern automated plants. It's designed to build simple, reliable parts that can't be hacked or corrupted. And this one, he pointed to another vessel, is a training ship filled with simulators that teach crews to think creatively. Representative Gray studied the display with his silver eyes. But where are the quantum cannons? The AI targeting systems? How can these simple weapons hope to defeat such an advanced enemy? Watch this, Kate said, activating a recorded battle simulation. The hologram showed a small human ship facing a massive enemy vessel. Instead of using energy weapons, the human ship released thousands of small metal balls into space. Basic physics, Tom explained. The enemy's quantum shields can stop energy weapons, but they ignore simple objects moving at high speed. Our ancestors found that sometimes a rock moving fast enough works better than the most advanced laser. The council members watched as the simulation showed the enemy ship torn apart by the cloud of speeding metal, its advanced defenses useless against such a basic attack. Each ship in the fleet uses a different simple solution. Kate continued. This one creates magnetic fields to disrupt their space-bending drives. This one uses sound waves to interfere with their quantum communications. Nothing complex, nothing that can be turned against us. A young alien scientist raised his tentacle. But how did your ancestors build ships that could last for thousands of years? Our best technology needs constant maintenance. Tom smiled. They used materials and methods that were already ancient in their time. Look at this hull. He knocked on the nearby wall. It's not made of modern nanomaterials. It's simple steel, but forged in such a way that it gets stronger with age. The computers aren't quantum processors. They're basic machines that follow simple, unchanging rules. The enemy's greatest weakness, Kate added, is that they've forgotten how to think simply. They rely so much on advanced technology that they can't handle basic solutions anymore. Our ancestors built this fleet to exploit that weakness. Suddenly, the ship's sensors detected movement. Through the viewport, they watched as panels opened along the sides of each vessel in the fleet. What looked like simple metal fins extended outward, catching the light of nearby stars. Solar sails, Tom said with amazement. The most basic form of space propulsion, but nearly impossible to detect or stop. The enemy will be looking for quantum drives and fusion engines. They won't expect ships powered by starlight. Kate's console beeped with new information. The fleet's sharing more data. Look at this. The ships aren't just meant to fight. They're meant to teach us, to remind humanity of its greatest strength. Which is? Asked Representative Gray. The ability to solve complex problems with simple solutions, Tom answered. While other species focused on making things more advanced, humanity kept its connection to basic principles. These ships aren't primitive. They're perfect. The fleet's main computer displayed a new message. To defeat an enemy that has forgotten the basics, you must remember them. Kate looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet. Our ancestors knew that one day we'd face an enemy so advanced, so dependent on complex technology, that only simple solutions could defeat them. That's why they built these ships to last, to wait for the moment when humanity would need to remember its roots. The ancient fleet began to move, its solar sails gleaming in the starlight. In an age of quantum computers and AI weapons, humanity's past was about to show the galaxy the power of keeping things simple. They're not just warships, Tom said quietly. They're a message from our ancestors, telling us that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. And soon, the enemy's going to learn that lesson the hard way. The emergency alarm echoed through the ancient fleet. The enemy ships had entered the solar system, their dark hulls absorbing light from the local star. On the command ship's bridge, Tom watched as more humans arrived through emergency transports. Each ship needs a crew of at least 20, he explained to the gathered volunteers. The controls are simple, designed to work with human instincts. No neural interfaces, no AI assistance, just pure human judgment. Kate stood at the main console, directing crews to their assigned ships. Remember your training. These vessels don't think for you. They respond to human creativity and quick thinking. That's what makes them special. Representative Gray paced nervously on the bridge. The Council had finally accepted that their advanced weapons would be useless against the approaching enemy. How can we be sure these ancient ships will even work in combat? As if in answer, the main screen lit up with a tactical display. The enemy fleet's formation appeared as a mass of dark spots against the star field. Their ships moved with perfect precision. Too perfect. That's their weakness, Tom pointed out. Look at their formation. It's flawless, driven by advanced computers. They can't understand unpredictable movements or random tactics. They've forgotten how to handle chaos. The first group of human crews reported ready from their ships. Many were civilians, farmers, construction workers, even athletes. People used to thinking on their feet and solving problems with whatever tools they had. Fleet Command Online, Kate announced. All ships reporting green status. These vessels were literally built for this moment. Tom walked to the captain's chair, a simple metal seat with basic controls. No neural links, no quantum interfaces, just buttons, levers, and screens showing clear information. As he sat down, the chair seemed to fit him perfectly. The enemy is launching probes, called out one of the sensor operators. They're trying to hack our systems. The crew watched nervously, but nothing happened. The ancient fleet's simple computers, running on basic logic circuits, were immune to the enemy's advanced cyber attacks. You couldn't hack a machine that operated on mechanical principles. All ships, begin Operation Slingshot, Tom ordered. The fleet's vessels moved into position, using their solar sails to gather momentum from the star's light. It was an ancient technique, but one that the enemy's sensors would have trouble detecting. Kate studied the tactical display. They're entering attack range. Their weapons are powering up. Quantum disruptors, gravity beams, neural scramblers. None of which will work against our ships, Tom reminded everyone. Our hulls are too simple to be affected by quantum fields. Our computers are too basic to be neural hacked. We don't use gravity drives that they can disrupt. The enemy fleet drew closer, their ships moving in perfect geometric patterns. They clearly expected the human vessels to be as advanced as modern ships, full of complex technology that could be turned against itself. All crews, final checks, Kate called out. Remember, these ships were built by our ancestors, tested in real combat against this same enemy. They knew what they were doing. Throughout the fleet, human crews familiarized themselves with their ships' simple but effective systems. Farmers who understood mechanical principles, athletes who grasped trajectory and momentum, builders who knew the strength of basic materials, all of them found the ancient technology natural to use. Enemy ships entering primary range, announced the sensor operator. They're charging their main weapons. Tom gripped the arms of his captain's chair, feeling the solid metal under his fingers. No fancy materials, no quantum enhancement, just well-built human engineering that had waited thousands of years for this moment. All ships, prepare for combat, he ordered. Remember your training. Keep it simple. Keep it unpredictable. Show them what humanity can do with the basics. The ancient fleet's engines hummed with power that had waited millennia to be used. Across every ship, humans stood ready at their posts, their minds free from AI assistance, ready to think creatively and act instinctively. The moment of truth had arrived. It was time to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't advanced technology, but the ability to triumph with simple solutions. The battle began with a flash of light as the enemy fleet unleashed its quantum weapons. Beams of pure energy crossed space, aimed at the ancient human ships, but instead of striking their targets, the beams passed harmlessly through the spaces where the fleet had been moments before. Basic tactics, Tom called out as his ship rolled to avoid another blast. They're firing where their computers predict we should be. Keep moving randomly. Humans are naturally unpredictable. Use that. The alien council members watched in amazement from their evacuation ships as the human fleet split into seemingly chaotic groups. There was no pattern to their movement, no logic their advanced computers could detect. First wave, release your payloads, Kate ordered through the fleet-wide channel. Dozens of human ships launched what looked like simple metal containers into space. The enemy ignored them, their sensors focused on detecting advanced weapons. That was their first mistake. The containers burst open, releasing millions of small metal spheres. In space, even a tiny object moving at high speed could hit like a bullet. The enemy's quantum shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did nothing against this physical assault. Their shields are failing, Tom announced as the first enemy ship's hull was shredded by the metal storm. Second wave, deploy the solar nets. More human ships moved forward, unfurling enormous nets of reflective material. The local star's light bounced off them, creating a blinding flash that confused the enemy's optical sensors. In the chaos, other human ships moved in close, using simple magnetic grapples to latch onto the enemy vessels. They're trying to adapt, Kate reported, watching the tactical display. Their ships are changing formation. Wait, no. They can't adapt. Their programming doesn't know how to handle such basic attacks. The enemy fleet's perfect formation began to break apart. Their advanced AI systems, programmed to counter sophisticated attacks, couldn't process the simple tactics the humans used. Each attempt to predict human movements failed because there was no pattern to predict. They're launching their drone swarms, someone called out. Millions of tiny robots poured from the enemy ships, their quantum processors ready to hack anything they touched. Tom smiled grimly. Release the chaff. Small pods ejected from the human ships, bursting to release clouds of metallic dust. The enemy drones, trying to process too many small objects at once, began to crash into each other and shut down. This is impossible, Representative Gray exclaimed, watching from safety. They're beating the most advanced fleet we've ever seen with primitive weapons. Not primitive, Kate corrected him. Perfect. Everything stripped down to its most basic, most reliable form. No weaknesses because there's nothing to exploit. The battle continued, but the outcome was already clear. Enemy ships, their complex systems confused and damaged, tried to retreat. But the human fleet had anticipated this too. The solar sails shifted, creating a web of reflected light that disrupted the enemy's space-bending drives. All ships, final attack pattern, Tom ordered. The fleet moved as one, but not in the perfect geometry of the enemy. They moved like a flock of birds, like a school of fish, organic, unpredictable, impossible for machines to counter. The last enemy ships fell to simple kinetic weapons, rocks accelerated to incredible speeds, metal nets that tangled their engines, concentrated light beams that overloaded their sensors. In the end, the most advanced fleet in the galaxy was defeated by basic physics and human creativity. As the dust settled, the council ships approached the victorious human fleet. The ancient vessels showed barely a scratch, their simple but sturdy construction having protected them perfectly. We understand now, Representative Gray said quietly. Your ancestors, they didn't build a primitive fleet. They built one that would last until it was needed, that would work when everything else failed. Tom looked out at the ancient ships, their solar sails gleaming in the starlight. That's always been humanity's strength, not building the most advanced solution, but building the right one. The fleet that had been laughed at now stood triumphant among the wreckage of their technologically superior enemy. Humanity had proven once again that sometimes the simplest answer was the best one, and their ancestors had known it all along. "Let them laugh," Kate said, smiling. "We'll keep building things that last."